Okay, hi everyone. My name is Olga from the University of Texas at Dallas, and along with my co-authors, Justin Hill and the professor Ebru Cankaya, we're here to present our work on the reflection of federal data protection standards and cloud governance. So, jumping right in, the outline for our publication in this presentation is as follows: motivation, methodology, background and related work, analysis and discussion, conclusion, and future work. So, regarding the motivation for our work, with this work, we aim to analyze cloud governance by combining multiple data security measures with legislative authority. So here we present legal aspects such as the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP, aimed at the prevention of data breaches, as well as the technical requirements regarding the implementation of data protection mechanisms. Specifically, we discuss primary authority um, and associated with least privilege principle in one of the main cloud service providers, Amazon Web Services, AWS. And in the United States, the regulatory landscape is very broad. Um, so data security and protection requirements differ by state significantly. For example, with data breach notification laws, there is no uniform regulation. Although data breach laws exist in all 50 states, some of the most restrictive ones are in California, exist under the California Consumer Privacy Act, and they also in Virginia under the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act. Um, so on top of that, cloud service providers also directed by the consumer protection measures. For example, in the industry of sales and goods, certain regulations apply as well as liability, jurisdiction, and typically governed not only by state, but the local state, but also different states apply their own consumer protection measures. So this makes establishing and implementing countermeasures complex, as most businesses in the US evolve multinational domain. Additionally, US customers with international operations are subject to international privacy laws like the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. And the US, while in the US regulations may include industry-specific laws, the US data privacy laws are very complex and diverse. For example, at the federal level, there are a number of laws that offer um, specific consumer protection measures, such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which protects health information, or the like Health and Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, and many of them. So, but even when if you are not working with the federal government, it is still important to know these regulations for protecting federal information systems, just out of the consideration of data governance and policy management. So, uh, instead of describing each laws individually, we decided to bridge data protection measures with the United States National Cybersecurity Strategy, which was adopted in March 2023. What's relevant here for us is that the strategy identifies a shift in cybersecurity responsibility sort of moving away from individuals and organizations with fewer resources towards larger cloud service providers, which adds more responsibility on them. Um, Related to that is Executive Order 14028 on improving the US cybersecurity, which encourages accelerating moving to secure cloud service providers. Cloud service providers that meet new cybersecurity requirements, such as multi-factor authentication, data encryption, and otherwise the zero trust design. So that's what this order is mainly about. The one below is Executive Order 13984, taking additional steps to address the national emergency with respect to significant malicious cyber-enabled activities online. It's quite a long name, and it addresses mainly threats to infrastructure as a service products originating from foreign actors. And of course, it encourages the US cloud service providers increase information sharing voluntarily to improve their cyber resiliency efforts. Just a few more to mention. Executive Order 13636, improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity. It is also an important one, as it encourages information sharing programs for US companies, and including cloud service providers. Executive Order 13800 on strengthening the cybersecurity of federal networks and critical infrastructure. Mainly, it authorizes agencies to use the NIST cybersecurity framework, an effective risk management framework. And the last but not the least, Executive Order 13873, securing the information and communications technology and services supply chain, which is the name implies, mainly addresses a supply chain, but not only that, as the cloud service providers are also an important part of IT procurement for federal government agencies. The order also applies to them. Mhm. A few current or the most recent pieces of legislation that are currently passing Congress, that's 3600, Strengthening American Cybersecurity Act, which is a bill that addresses cybersecurity threats against critical infrastructure for the federal government. Also focuses on improving cyber incident reporting applications and ultimately securing the cloud adoption for federal government. And the one below is the FedRAMP Authorization Act, which is an important piece of legislation since it provides statutory authority for the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, which is namely FedRAMP, within the General Services Administration Agency. So a few words about previous research papers and our fellow academics. Ali discussed security requirements for cloud computing in the government sector and presented an analysis concerning the Australian federal government's cloud first strategy. Marco Polo discussed the Network and Information Security Directive on securing data in the European Union, while applying the European Union Agency of Cybersecurity frameworks and the General Data Protection Regulations. Shimizu also discussed challenge related to retaining the least privileged on the cloud, namely challenges associated with keeping minimum set of permissions. Since the least privilege principle is a hotly discussed topic in cloud service providers, there are a few works that address this principle in Amazon web services. For example, Mishra proposed creating least privilege permissions when designing permissions during start and stop task for Amazon EC2 instances. Gil recognized the limitations of AWS least privilege policy and identified several deficiencies in them. For example, wildcard may result in overprivileged design, and according to him, even if we provide a narrow specification of the resource, the call may not succeed because in some instances the resource or the action in this policy must be the wildcard. That's okay. Okay, and moving on to the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP. So, FedRAMP provides a way to streamline the security and risk assessment process for maximum efficiency. So, cloud service providers can safely engage in cloud-first strategy. FedRAMP relies on several NIST special publication documents, including 853 for system controls and 137, I'm sorry, moving fast, for risk management. So this streamline occurs with a focus on which controls the cloud service provider manages and which are managed by the agency. So FedRAMP also provides authorizations within all three impact levels, essentially high, moderate, and low, and within various types of cloud, including hybrid and public types. And so FedRAMP provides a cross-relational mapping of NIST controls and their baselines. For example, if we choose least privilege as a parameter among other data protection mechanisms, we can see that the requirement is divided by the control type within high and moderate baselines. And first we choose the least privilege as a parameter out of a consideration that in a cloud environment, the power of the privileged users is significant. And for that reason, we need to implement a periodic review of privileges as it provides for both high and moderate baselines, review and validation, as well as regularly reassignment and removing privileges is essential. So by adhering to cloud data protection standards defined in the FedRAMP security guidelines, cloud service providers demonstrate their commitment to state-of-the-art data protection mechanisms, which are replicated in the form of consistent and transparent procedures. So, among many ways which we can enforce granular access control in a policy in Amazon Web Services, when designing a least privileged policy, Amazon recommends using an attribute-based access control or ABAC. So the way this method is done is by using the job function and project attributes as session tags when users access from a SAML IDP. For example, this can be used in a scenario when policy requires different roles of managers accessing either EC2 instances or relational database service instances when according to their roles, they have access only to the resources related to the job function and project. So in short, we can achieve that by using SAML attributes, which include project assignments, then passing these attributes as session tags to control access to the resources based on these session tags. And as policies are periodically updated, the security framework may include new features, which are frequently redesigned in policies of cloud service providers. So, for example, here in this example, AWS recommends adding condition keys in the policy to implement more granular control by adding these two keys to the policy. We can restrict access to the resources. Therefore, the policy will deny access to the resources if the request does not originate from the same VPC or IP of the EC2 instance. So cloud service providers offer government innovative products that help them save time and resources while meeting the critical mission needs. Cloud service provider that obtained a FedRAMP authorization demonstrate commitment to understanding FedRAMP, leveraging FedRAMP templates, and maintain compliance with federal regulations. Through FedRAMP, cloud service providers can address aspects of the five zero trust pillars, essentially identity, devices, networks, applications, and data, and enable the visibility needed to begin creating cross-pillar interactions. The authorization implies correctly configuring these services, establishing effective identity and access management roles, and restricting an access to resources by implementing the least privilege principle. In conclusion, we present the current cloud security efforts by focusing on cloud governance, by combining multiple data security measures with legislative authority. Here we present legal aspects such as FedRAMP, targeting data breach prevention, and demonstrate the technical requirements. Specifically, we discussed the primary authority and technical frameworks addressing least privilege on the example of AWS. Our analysis demonstrates that the principle of least privilege finds an extensive interpretation in AWS, including attribute-based access control, uh, combined with condition keys, overall supporting zero trust architecture. As far as our future work with changing governments and ever-evolving cyber technologies in cloud infrastructure, the fundamental security principles also change, and where most values still remain unknown, and we continue looking for alternatives to explore for strengthening the cloud security. And this will conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for attention. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, please, if you have any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. Any questions from forum? I think there are no more questions. So thank you once again,